Hello, everyone. We're back again here today with Daniel Ehrenrich, and we're going to be talking about using Wikidata on Wikipedia. Daniel, do you remember the first time you started editing Wikidata? What first got you into it?
Yeah, so I originally started working on Wikidata because I was looking for some data sets that were open that I could use actually for some stuff I was doing at work. We were trying to make predictions about things, and we wanted information about countries and revenue and things like that. So I started importing lots of data into Wikidata, and then as I started getting excited about the whole idea of the linked open data, and kind of snowballed from there.
Okay, thanks. And according to you, why is Wikidata especially useful on Wikipedia?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is how it allows people from across different wikis to collaborate sort of implicitly. So you can have one piece of information that gets updated one time, and then it gets used by all these different places. And so it just reduces the duplicative work that would have otherwise existed. It also allows for sort of better referencing in some cases and more general ways of representing the data. I'm a big fan of Wikidata, so I think there's a lot of opportunities for things that people haven't even thought of yet to leverage on wikis.
Great, great. And I think you might have brought us an example of a Wikidata powered info box for Wikipedia. Perhaps you could show us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure, I'd love to. As I'm sure people are aware, there are a lot of examples of Wikidata powered info boxes on Wikipedia already. So, for example, this is just the page for General Electric. And you can see down here at the bottom, the website is being pulled from Wikidata, and you can tell because there's this little pen icon. And if you click that, it shows you that on Wikidata, the website is being set there. This is an example of a really simple integration where it's just the website. Websites don't get updated very often, so this is, useful, but not terribly useful. But there
Hmm.
are other pieces of data that people use on Wikipedia, which does get updated fairly frequently. So it actually would be pretty valuable to save people time to have a robot do that automatically on a weekly basis, and then pull the information. And the example that I worked on personally was YouTube subscriber data. So, for example, this is Mr. Beast's page on English Wikipedia. And you'll see that subscribers are 239 million or 379 million, depending how you count. And this information needs to get updated by editors, whenever this ticks over to a new million, which is a bunch of work.
Like
And
manually,
I
you mean?
actually, yeah, manually editors, fans of Mr. Beast. What I was told was that, it's kind of creating problems on English Wikipedia because fans will come in and every single time it ticks over a little bit and just creates so much noise in the history that, does it really need to be updated every single time it goes up a little bit.
Okay.
Um, so, so the idea was, what if we connect this to Wikidata and solve this problem, for all the wikis simultaneously?
Uh-huh. And do you have an example then of one that is pulling the data from Wikidata?
Yeah. So this one isn't, as I noted, but this is a different, less well-known YouTuber, and you can see here that their subscriber count is being pulled from Wikidata, and you can see they have almost 54,000 subscribers. And if we click the pen icon, that takes us over to their Wikidata page, and you can see here that actually we have a bunch of information. So there's a property called social media followers, and in that we have the number of followers over time. So you can see that in June of 2022, they had 18,000 subscribers. And then you can see that actually this is their Twitter follower account. So on Twitter in 2022, they had 128,000 subscribers. And you see that the current value is 53,900.
I,
So, yeah.
I see. So you have multiple years worth of data in there. You don't
Yeah.
just replace the existent one.
Yeah, on Wikidata, it's best form not to delete data that's still true. So it is still true that in 2023 they had 43,000 followers. So we just try to add new pieces of information instead of deleting the old one.
Hmm.
So that does create some problems sometimes. If there's a lot of if we updated this literally every day, this table would be huge.
Right.
So we try to be judicious about when we're doing that.
And I suppose it's possible to use that data to create graphs or visualizations to see how this social media follow account has changed over time.
Yeah, so nobody is doing that currently, but I would say that's, one of the exciting things that people aren't yet doing, but they could be doing,
Hmm.
across the wikis.
And perhaps you could show me if I want to enter in a new value, how I go about that.
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. So what you'll see here is that there's the way it works is that this is the social media followers value. So you hit add new value, and I'm logged out, so it's gonna tell me that I need to agree to the Creative Commons license. But if we wanted
Do
to
you,
say, they have.
sorry to interrupt you. Do I need to have I need to have an account to enter in the data?
No, you don't actually. It says here you're not logged in. Your public IP address will be visible, but you don't need an account to update this data. It means that your IP address will be visible to the public.
I see.
Uh, but yeah, so you just go, we'll see what they now have 100,000 followers. And the way this works is that this is a property called social media followers. So what you have to do is you have to say what point in time. So we'll say point in time, we'll say today, which is February 2024. You can Wikidata lets you specify a sort of vague date. So the current date is the 15th, so I guess I'll write that. And then you have to specify that the social media followers are on this YouTube channel. So we would say YouTube channel, and then we would copy the YouTube channel identifier.
Hmm.
And then if I were to hit publish, that would update the value. I'm not going to do that, but
Sure.
that would that would then override the value, and the Wikidata template would change. Fortunately, nobody really has to do that because there's a bot that automatically updates this data.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's really handy. I notice that it has one reference marked. Is it really important to also reference data that you enter into Wikidata, just like you would creating content for Wikipedia articles?
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you're using Wikidata, you should add references. I mean, it's pretty straightforward to do that. So, I mean, you just hit the add reference button. The most common reference type on Wikidata, I'm pretty sure, is just the reference URL. So, if you just want to, cover your bases, you can just type in, whatever website you just referenced, and then
Hmm.
just hit publish, and that'll say the reference. You can even have multiple references. Currently, this particular integration doesn't pull the reference. So if we go back to the page, you'll see that there is no reference there. It's a little unusual for subscriber account because the reference is always just the YouTube API, which is where we got the information from. So it's a
Hmm.
little redundant. But for different kinds of integrations, you might want to have the references pulled as well.
Okay. And so how did you get this info box to display like this on the Wikipedia page? Did you have to use any special templates, or did you have to adjust the like the non-Wikidata info boxes? How do the information get displayed there?
Yeah. So this info box that's used on English Wikipedia is called info box YouTube personality. And it already existed and already had a field called subscribers. So what we did is we integrated with the YouTube Infobox YouTube personality. So I actually have it open right here, and this gets warning for people who are
Mm,
sensitive to complicated code. This gets a little tricky,
hmm.
and the reason why this gets so tricky. Let me just go back actually for a second.
Okay.
The reason this gets so tricky is because this integration has, as you mentioned, the history of all the values. So
Hmm.
it has the value from 2022, it has the value from 2023, and it has the value from 2024. And that makes this integration complicated because we have to figure out what the most recent value is and then pull only that value. Whereas the example we saw in the beginning for General Electric, that's just pulling the website. There's only one value for that. It just pulls it. It's pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
But for YouTube, for YouTube subscriber count, it's a little more nuanced there. And so that actually requires more than just something simple. It requires what is called Lua code, which are represented using modules on English Wikipedia.
Hmm.
So I'm not going to go through the code itself, but there's how many lines? There's 200 lines of code
Well,
that I personally wrote to make this integration work. It but if somebody wanted to, for example, move this exact integration over to a different wiki, all you would have to do is copy and paste it onto your wiki, and it would work straight away.
yeah.
So this kind of integration, it can be copied over, but there is some complexity to doing something that's complicated like this. If you want to do something simpler, you won't need quite this much complexity.
Okay. Yeah, it's quite intimidating to look at, but I imagine we'll probably have like a future session on exactly this topic, so we'll try not to get too deep into it now. Um,
Yeah.
but if for instance, if I had an idea of a info box I wanted to make, but I don't know how to write Lua, I don't know how to make the code. Are there spaces or forums or areas on the wiki where I can approach, experts and ask for help or collaboration?
There definitely are. This particular integration started when some people from English Wikipedia came to the Wikidata project chat, which I think is a reasonable place to come if you want to start a collaboration with, moving data between Wikidata and some other wiki.
Hmm.
They came to us and said, we have this problem. We see that you guys already have some of this data. How hard would it be to do? And sort of I said, I'm very interested in this. Let me help you out. And so we had a collaboration that started. So I would definitely reach out to, any of the major chat areas, Telegram channels potentially,
Hmm.
and see if you can find some collaborators for the project. If anybody has anything they want to do specifically with YouTube data, they can reach out to me on my talk page, and I'd gladly try to help as much as I
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I think that's an important thing if you're a new editor to, in this space, whether it's Wikipedia or Wikidata, is that you just have to ask, and there's plenty of people willing to, to help you out. Um,
Yeah.
All right. Maybe we can move on then a little bit. I want to ask you perhaps what the main things one should keep in mind when they're using Wikidata on Wikipedia.
Yeah. I think it's important that the properties that you use correspond. But Wikidata, Wikidata and Wikipedia, they don't model the world in the same way,
Mhm.
and that can make things complicated sometimes. And for newcomers, this can be pretty daunting. Where it's, is this page about uh, the list of governors, or is this actually the page about governors? And these subtleties come up in ways where you need to understand the ontology. And so my recommendation would be to look at a whole bunch of different items on Wikidata to get a sense for how they're generally structured, or look at one of the wiki projects on Wikidata to see how data is structured. So there's a wiki project for books, there's a wiki project for businesses, and those will tell you, generally a business will have revenue, it'll have a country, it'll have these pieces of information. And that'll give you a sense for how we're structuring the information, because it may not always be immediately obvious that the information is being structured in a certain way. And, different areas of Wikidata structure data in different ways. And so you want to know what are the properties that are reliably populated, and then you want to figure out how to pull those into Wikipedia in a way that's useful for the readers.
Mhm.
So whether or not that's pulling the label, pulling the description, or doing something more complicated. Um,
Sure, sure. Yeah, I guess I remember when I first started editing on Wikidata and then also looking at Wikipedia, I was a little bit nervous that the information I might put is wrong. But then I later
mhm.
discovered that there's plenty of people who are willing to come over and just leave a comment and say, maybe change it and explain why it's wrong, or how it could be corrected, or how it could be better presented.
Yeah, Wikidata is it feels sort of more like the Wild West of like the early days of English Wikipedia almost.
Hmm.
There are a lot of rules and a lot of projects, but some things just legitimately, like, people will come to the project chat and they're like, how do I represent the concept of this? And it's like, you know what, we haven't thought about that yet, and so we'll collaboratively figure it out. And so sometimes there isn't an answer yet for how to represent a certain thing. We make new properties all the time. So if there's a concept that you want to represent, so for example, I showed the number of subscribers as a concept that we represent, but another concept that we don't currently represent is the total number of views. So that's something that just nobody's had the time to go in and make a new property to represent the total number of views a YouTube channel has had, which is another information that the info box tries to track. So
Hmm.
there's lots of opportunity for making this better and more complete.
Sure. I guess it's important to remember that you can't maybe people have tried, but you can't break it. You can be bold and try things, and it's very robust.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're worried about it, what people will often do is they'll make 10 edits, and then they'll come to the project chat and say, "Hey, I'm new. Here are 10 edits. Does this look reasonable to everybody?" But if you're doing something wrong, people will come to you and leave you a message on your talk page saying, "Hey, I think you should read this help page. It explains how to write descriptions," or whatever it is.
Hmm. Great, thank you. I'll just ask a final question. What would you suggest to someone who'd like to start using Wikidata on their wiki, but they're not really sure how to start or where to go?
Um, I think the most valuable pieces of information to pull from Wikidata are values that frequently change, and values that are used on lots of different wikis simultaneously. So things that are, for the example, the subscriber count is something that I think is a good place to look. But there's lots of other pieces of information. So another project I'm working on currently is trying to get business market cap data and revenue data, number of employees into Wikidata, so that can be leveraged across lots of different areas. Because I think that's where the savings in people's time is, and then really making the quality of the Wikipedia is higher.
Okay. Well, thank you, Daniel. It's been a really great conversation.